us in prayer with me, please. Heavenly Father, we praise you for your boundless love and for your provision. Your word tells us that we need to look carefully at how we walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of our time. We need your wisdom to navigate our lives in this season of change, tension, and difficulty. Help us to live according to the rule that right now counts forever. This moment we have now, all of the opportunities to do good will be gone tomorrow. If we waste it, we cannot get it back. We pray for our national leaders and our local leaders and our state leaders and our governor who will be here today, who strives each day to keep our state safe and prosperous. Lord, we know we stumble each day, but forgive our transgressions, and through your Holy Spirit, lead us to a renewed life and a warm heart towards others. Bless this food and the hands that prepared it for your service and for Jesus' sake. Amen.
Thank you, Karen. That was beautiful. For our visiting Rotarians and guests, William Starr. We have one visitor, Phil Remmet from Fairfax, Virginia, and he's just relocated to Chapin.
Good afternoon. I'm delighted to have as my guest Mark Moselle, a Vice President from First Citizens Bank today. He's a former president of the Sumter Rotary Club, but now he's moved to Columbia. Thank you, Mark.
So Phil Brummett is actually a visiting Rotarian from Fairfax, Virginia, and one of my oldest friends in the world. I've known him since I was in the 3rd grade. He was in the 6th. And he's a great Rotarian up there. He's finally gotten his act together and moved his family down here, building a house out on the lake. He is a consulting engineer, and really looking forward to having Phil around, so please welcome Phil Brummett.
Like Karen, I introduce Jackie Rivers, who is the executive director of the South Carolina Optometric Physicians Association.
Hey, I'm Hal Stevenson. This is my wife, Deanna, visiting with me today.
Hey, I'm Adam Jordan. My guest today is Mike Hitchcock. He's the CEO of the South Carolina Retirement System Investment Commission. So if you have questions about your pension or Bitcoin or GameStop, ask Mike.
I'm Nicholas Beasley. My guest is Scott Gillette. We go to church together, and Scott works for Whitaker Contracting Corporation, which I believe is in the road building, gravel, stone business, an Alabama corporation, but he lives here.
Hey everybody, this is Jimmy Beecham. He is the owner of Link Sign and Graphics. We also go to church together as well, and he's downtown in Columbia, so anybody looking for sign and graphics, this is your guy.
Hey everybody, I'm Nicole Crook, and my visitor is Andrew Siders. He is with the Aiken chapter of the Rotary, and he is also Vice Chairman of the Aiken County Council.
Hey, I'm Stephen Creech, and I'm introducing Michael George on behalf of our President Mason. Michael's a friend of mine and a neighbor, and he's the sales manager for Sheely Electrical. Welcome, Michael.
Hello everybody, I'm Carl Byers with CF Evans. I'm especially proud to introduce our guest today, which is Brittany Grabsky, our new marketing manager for CF Evans. Welcome, Brittany.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen. I would like to introduce Mr. Matt Cunningham from Cigna. His role is payroll. Him and I is a BNI members, RRG, and also he's a member of Blythewood Rotary Club. Welcome, Matt.
Is there anyone else?
Thank you all for coming and being our visitors and our guests today, those current Rotarians and visiting Rotarians and guests. Thank you so much. Next on the agenda is Russ Bell to give health and happiness. Russ?
Thank you, Mason. Today is an interesting day, 2/1/21. That was in first observation. A little bit of news for you today. Catherine mentioned to me that Prisma is handling the drive-through vaccine in Gamecock Park. And walk-ins are welcome if you are age qualified and by appointment. And if you have further questions, Catherine would love to answer them for you. A message from the CART Fund. And Frank, I want to once again tell you thank you for all your service with that and your inspiration with that. Caring for someone with dementia is challenging. Caregivers need all the help they can get, but where can they go? One of the places in the Columbia area is Lisa's Care Connection, and that's located in the former Michael J. Mungo home on St. Andrews Road. And it was established by Lisa Gibbons, whose mother had dementia. Its mission is to help family caregivers cope with Alzheimer's. They offer a wide variety of programs, information, support, and groups. And to learn more about them, you can contact or look up them on the net, lisascareconnection.org. And we, as you're very well familiar, Rotarians are doing our part to address the problem of Alzheimer's by supporting research. And so there is one of them over here, a blue bucket, and I would remind you to drop silent money in the bucket or checks. Okay, so I would like to say, Governor McMaster, I would like to tell you thank you for your leadership during very difficult times over the past, seemingly now almost a full year, believe it or not, but thank you very much. I have just one little funny, because I want to leave him all the time I possibly can, but also share with you a few obscure South Carolina facts. But first, when Tampa Bay, they are playing in the Super Bowl this coming Sunday, when they first joined the league, they had an away game at Green Bay. And when they walked out into the field, they looked up at the scoreboard, and it said Green Bay versus Tampa. The Green Bay folks didn't think they needed to add the Bay. So later in the year, Green Bay was returning the visit. And when they got to Tampa, they walked out on the field and it said, Tampa Bay versus Green. So just always be careful. Revenge can be sweet. A few South Carolina facts, and we know the bird is the wren, and the tree is the palmetto, and things like that. The dance is the shag. So I looked up a few other obscure facts. You may or may not know these. The greatest distance from north to south in our state is 219 miles. East to west, 273. The geographic center of our state is in Richland County. It's about 13 miles southeast of Columbia. The largest county is Horry County at around 1,130 square miles. McCormick is the smallest at 360 square miles. The highest mountain, I thought this was a wee bit humorous, is called Sassafras Mountain, and it's 3,500 feet high. The largest river is the Santee River. It flows 143 miles, and it actually drains approximately 40% of our state. The longest river is the Savannah. We share that with Georgia. It's 238 miles. Our coastline is around 187 miles, but it did mention in this article that if you went up and down the rivers and around the
harbors, it would be a lot longer than that, but 187 miles. The coldest temperature ever recorded in our state, 1977, Caesar's Head, -19. The hottest, we do know where that is, that's in Columbia. In 2012, that was 113 degrees. And we could use a wee bit of that nowadays. I would just like to say, I am proud to be an American, but I'm more specifically proud to be a South Carolinian. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you, Russ. That was great. I do recall, and I don't have this as fact, but I recall that at one point the geographic center of the state was that big tree on the corner of Sumter and Gervais in the Trinity Cathedral graveyard where 7 governors are buried. After Hugo, it moved across the street to the actual State House grounds. I thought that was pretty cool to have the geographic center of the state at the actual State House. Obviously, that's changed a lot since then, but that's what I recall anyway. Okay, back to business. Do put some money in the buckets. I want to have a vaccine check. Raise the number of arms that you've had a shot for vaccine so far. We're going to continue to do this throughout the spring. I'm glad to see all those. Yes, sir, Jimmy, do you have a question? Do you have something to say?
Love Prisma Hospital.
Love Prisma Hospital. There's a little ad there. Okay. We will be raising hands going forward on all that. I do want to remind you, we do have a mask ordinance in this city and in this county. When you're finished eating and drinking, please put your mask on. We want everybody to feel comfortable and safe being here. And we're glad to be socially distanced, and Cal Sewell has done a great job for today's meeting. Membership is essential to the club. We hold Discover Rotary meetings for prospective members every first Monday of the month. We had one this morning. We had a couple of prospective members here. We're glad to have them. Our next meeting for Discover Rotary will be at 11:30 on March 1st. Please encourage prospective members to come and attend. We'll have another great speaker that day. But every first Monday of the month, we will have the Discover Rotary meetings for prospective club members. Financial update. You received your quarterly invoices. We need all of you to pay them as soon as you can. The board and the administration of the club, we're reviewing the finances going forward and some options. We hope to report these findings and recommendations to you in the next couple of weeks. The scholarship committee will be meeting directly after this meeting. Remember that we give out substantial scholarships every year as part of our benevolence to the community. The scholarship committee is going to meet right over there by the door, because simultaneously we're having our bocce ball committee. Our bocce ball bash will be held in October, and that raises the money with the Special Olympics, but also for our scholarships. And they're going to meet over here, so 2 opposite ends. Scholarship committee over there, and bocce ball committee with Margaret Clarkson right over here after the meeting is adjourned. All right. Before we introduce our speaker, I want to remind everybody in the media that is here that during the governor's Q&A period, only members of the club, of the Columbia Rotary Club, and our guests may ask questions of the governor. You may remain after the meeting and ask specific questions of the governor after we have adjourned. Okay, with all that business out of the way, we'll have an introduction of our speaker. For an introduction is our President-elect, Catherine Davis.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor and privilege to introduce the Governor of South Carolina, Henry McMaster, who is a Columbia native and an esteemed member of our club, the Columbia Rotary Club. So thank you so much for coming. But the best part of today is that you graced us with your lovely wife, Miss Henry McMaster, and please give her a welcome round of applause. Because it was my wish from the beginning, if you recall, I thought that was the best way to get him here, so I tried that. So anyway, I'm just thrilled that you were able to join us today. So back to Governor McMaster. He became the 117th governor of South Carolina on January 24th, 2017, and was elected to his first full term as governor in November 6, 2018. Since becoming governor, Governor McMaster has announced more than 41,000 new jobs and nearly $12 billion in capital investments. Prior to his time as governor, he served as a U.S. attorney appointed by President Ronald Reagan, Republican Party chair, South Carolina Attorney General, and South Carolina Lieutenant Governor. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on. There will be a book written, I'm sure, someday about his life. But Governor McMaster has served also on the South Carolina Ports Authority Board of Directors, the South Carolina Commission on Higher Education, the Palmetto Health Foundation Board, now called the Prisma Health Midlands Foundation Board, and he chaired the South Carolina Policy Council. Governor McMaster is a recipient of the Order of the Palmetto, the highest civilian honor in the state, and was named Public Servant of the Year by the Sierra Club, and was also named National Law Enforcement Officer of the Year by the Humane Society of the United States. Governor McMaster, again, is married to the lovely Peggy McMaster, and the two of them have two lovely children. Guess who? Henry D. McMaster Jr. and Mary Rogers McMaster. They are members of First Presbyterian Church here in Columbia, and with that, I reserve the time remaining for the governor. Welcome.
Beautiful introduction, appreciate it. Yes, this is my favorite wife, Peggy. And Mason, you were mentioning the location, this being the center. Y'all remember historically there was a big battle over that, and it was in 1787 when we became a city. And Thomas Sumter was fighting with everybody else. He actually created a little town called Statesburg. It's just on the other side of the Wateree River. And the claim at that time was that that is the geographic center, and that's where he wanted the capital to be. And so they voted on it in the legislature, and by one vote, Columbia won. One vote. So one vote always counts. Keep that in mind. I'm happy to be here, and I'll try to leave a good bit of time for questions, because I'd like to know what y'all want to know about. A lot of this stuff is in the news. And if you go online, and Andy, there's some pretty good stories written about it. There's Andy Shane. Pretty good stories written about it sometimes. But you can go on the website, the DHEC website, and there's a whole lot of information on there, including this. And this is the one that has the total doses and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't have all the locations on it, but you can find those as well. There's nothing secret about it. And I thought I'd take it sort of from the top, when it began, and then go through where we are today just very quickly. As you remember, the virus started early in the year, and we started reacting. You remember the Trump administration promised and did deliver manufacturers encouragement to produce vaccines, and we have only 2 so far. Those are made by Pfizer and by Moderna. There's some others coming along. And those are the kinds we're giving shots with now in our state and everywhere else in the country. There's some more coming along. Johnson & Johnson is producing one, and Janssen another, and there may be some others as well that are coming along. So by March, we ought to have a lot more. Sometime mid-March, they promised us some time ago that we would have a lot more vaccine than we have now. Now we don't have enough. Everybody wants a shot. But also, we've not given all the shots that we have. And so we're working, we can do very little to increase our share or our flow that is coming into the state, because that is set strictly by population, which was the best way for the federal government to do it. It's all coming from the federal government, no private sources, at least so far. So what happened when they made the first allocations, and we got ours in December the 14th, all of the hospitals and others are getting a shipment a week. Started off as 2 shipments. The first doses followed weeks later by the second doses. Now they're putting it all in one shipment, but they get a shipment every week. And it's roughly, it was 30,000 Pfizer first doses, 30,000 second doses, and the same for Moderna, but it's stepped down. With Pfizer, you get your second shot 2 weeks after the first one. With Moderna, you get your second shot either 3 or 4 weeks later, something like that. So it's coming in. Now, the original allocation that they chopped up at the federal government, they were confident they either had in what they called a stockpile or would be produced at a rate of 8.6 million by Moderna and Pfizer combined was $50,000. 57 million doses of the two vaccines. Our share of that, based on our population, was about 1.5%, which came out to 822,000 doses, and that's what we're drawing down on now. That's 1.5%, not of all the people in the state, which is about 5.1 million, but of those 18 and over. Because they're younger than that, if they get it, they don't show it. Most of them don't get it, so it's not recommended for people, for young people to begin with. So that is what has been coming in, and now it's coming in at about 120,000 doses per week. And just last week, the Biden administration announced that Pfizer and Moderna, they had been trying to increase their dosage, and they succeeded just a couple of weeks ago in upping their production from 8.6 million to 10 million. So that means we'll get about 19,000 more doses per week, Moderna and Pfizer combined, mostly Moderna, until it continues to go up. But it's going to continue to go up, and as I said in March, they are telling us that, if they told us this from the beginning, that there'd be a lot more vaccine out there than there is now. So that's good news. We've got the vaccine, it's coming in, it's not enough, but we need to see that we're using all that we have. So what we learned was that, of course, the hospitals were the first places that DHEC assigned or allocated the vaccine to, because they set up to get shots very quickly, and most of them had the kind of refrigerators that can keep a dose of vaccine at 158 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, which is about 70 degrees below 0 centigrade. So that's what they did, and those doses went out, and as it began, the hospitals were not moving quite fast enough, some moving a lot faster than others, but we encouraged them to step on it. And what we learned was very interesting, is that the hospital employees themselves were in that first category of people to get the shots. And the idea was that those who take care of those of us who may be in there dying from something need to be there to take care of those of us who may be dying from something. And it turned out that the average age of the death for COVID is 75 years old. So it's the older people. But just as those first shipments were coming down in mid-December, the CDC opened it up to first responders, EMTs, firefighters, and those kind of people. Also, what do they have in common with the hospital employees? They keep us alive and protect us, and in many cases get us to the hospital. So that was the emphasis, and that right now is Category 1A, that you've heard about. Well, what we saw in the first few weeks surprised us, and that is only in the hospitals, only about 1/3 of those who are eligible, which was a lot of people, only about 1/3 of them were actually getting the virus, getting the vaccine. And another 1/3 were thinking about it, and about 1/3 had said they were not interested. And we've seen that around the state as well since then. Although it's higher now in the hospital, it's over 50%, it may be way over 50% of those employees there. I don't have the latest numbers on that, but there is a reluctance on the part of some people to get the virus, to get the vaccine. So of the 401 million that we have people that are eligible for the shot, there probably will be a lot of them that are not going to get it. And as you know, we've had about 350,000, maybe more than that, who've had the virus. As you know, there are antibodies that build up. DHEC has estimated at one time that there may be those who get the virus, that test positive for the virus, may constitute only 20% of those that have it. That number, that estimate may be way off. So there may be a lot of people that are immune that we don't know about. But in any event, we are confident that everybody in the state that is eligible is not going to come get the vaccine. So the hospital sped up. When we saw that the people were not flowing through there as we thought, We encourage the hospitals. We opened it for 70 years old and above, knowing that 75 is the average age, and that caused a lot of folks to show up to get shots. The older people were a lot more interested than everybody else. So what happened then was some of the hospitals had not allocated the personnel necessary to handle that kind of flow. So we encouraged them to consider, if necessary, consider putting off elective surgeries if necessary to get more people to give shots and to help with that process. I need to say is giving the shots the easy part. It's getting everybody registered and then the follow-up with them is the hard part. Unfortunately, the federal government required registration of every dose of vaccine to be recorded in a computer system that is almost impossible to operate. Have a lot of problems with that. They describe it as clunky, but we've called VAMs, but we've worked around that. And so we saw then that there were a lot of people going in and the hospitals needed some help. So we suggested that they consider eliminating those elective surgeries, and some of them considered that, but they have brought in more and more people. The Emergency Management Division as well is seeking contracts to bring nurses and other people from all over the country. But as you know, the whole country is looking for more nurses. So one thing we did a few weeks ago was passed an order that allowed retired nurses, retired physicians, and medical students, anyone qualified to give a dose, to give a vaccine, which is not everybody, to go and do that. And as a result of that, we've had volunteers all over the place. Some of them contact DHEC directly, others contact the hospitals directly, and we've got a lot of volunteers coming in. But when we opened it up to the 70-year-olds, that's when things really got started. And what I'm hoping we can do, we're looking at the flow, checking the vaccine, and we're hoping that we can open it up to 65 and above very soon. And then we'll also, the Category 1B includes teachers and a lot of others. We want to get to that as soon as we can. The average age of a teacher in South Carolina is about 42 years old. The figures vary. I've read in one place 59,000 teachers, in another place 65,000. There are a lot of teachers. Judge Anderson, there are a lot of judges. There are a lot of people in transportation. There are a lot of people that need to get that vaccination. But we got to take care of those in the most danger of dying from it first. And that is why we and the CDC has echoed this. We want to go to 65 and over. And we'll get, just as quickly as we can get more vaccine, we'll keep on going with that. I'll be glad to read you some of these statistics. I might better wait and do that if you ask questions. But we've got right now, let's see, how many on the shelf? We have about 150,000 doses that are on the shelf. That is, that have not been given. And there are three categories of locations: the hospitals, large and small, then pharmacies, and then the long-term care and nursing homes. CVS and Walgreens, their organizations, they are sending teams out to the long-term care facilities and nursing homes, and there's 750 of those. The other doses are going to the pharmacies that have signed up. About 600 have signed up, pharmacies, health centers, some doctors' offices, fire stations, a few of those. About 600 of those have signed up. But right now, it looks like only about 230 of those are actually giving shots, but the rest should be coming online soon. And then that leaves the hospitals. But Prisma, you may have noticed today, Prisma celebrated their 100,000th shot today over at the USC, over in the Gamecock Park. It was quite an affair. That's a lot of shots. And again, we have mobile sites. The National Guard is very much involved setting up mobile sites, just as they set up. I think we got over 300 testing sites. And on that point, by the way, I think we've tested close to 5 million people, but that's the whole population. But some of them have been tested twice, or maybe 3 times. So if you want to get tested, there are plenty of testing sites out there. And if you're over 70, you can find a place pretty easy, and pretty soon it'll be 65. That'll encompass a lot more people in this particular area. So I urge you to do that. I'll be glad to answer questions. Again, here's some good news of our younger people from 1 year old through 19. We've had one death only in the state. That was recently, and that was something called multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children. It's not quite like COVID, but everyone, it seems, that has that disease also has COVID. So it's don't know if it's a contributing factor or what, but we have lost one. But other than that, strictly with COVID, we've lost no young people, no school-aged young people, and that is very, very good news. And that is one reason that we got to open these schools back up. Now, there are a lot of schools that just don't want to do it. They've got their reasons. But the evidence is mounting stronger and stronger that the schools are one of the safest places to be. And the reason, there are not a lot of reasons. One is because there are a lot of young people in the schools. And they either don't get it. If they do, they don't transmit it. Most of them don't get it. And the evidence that we've seen most recently from Charleston County School District, there's no evidence of the virus going from a student to a teacher. People get it outside the school, or some of the teachers or staff have given it to each other. But again, that's only a handful, because the schools can be controlled, the flow of people, and we've offered PPE, personal protective equipment. We've offered everything that any school district could want. Some have taken us up on it, some of them haven't. But you've all read the stories about the unintended consequences. The law of unintended consequences will always get you. And there are all sorts of unintended consequences of very traumatic and serious impact among the young people by not being in school. So that's why we're pushing for that. So that's my story. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions. Yes, ma'am, and sir, in the back.
Governor, so first of all, I want to say, as an adopted South Carolinian, I've been here for a long time. I've always been glad to be a South Carolinian, but probably never more than now. I've been doing quite a bit of traveling during this time, and I have friends all over the place. And South Carolina is probably the most normal place that anybody has been, where the economy feels relatively normal, the restaurants are limited capacity and things of that nature. So I want to thank you for your leadership in balancing safety issues with common sense and keeping things going. Along those lines, can you share with us some of the plans of relaxing some of the restrictions, such as bars and restaurants? The Hospitality Association, and a lot of friends of mine own restaurants and bars, and they're getting crushed. And some of these businesses that really are having a difficult time, even with our level of restrictions. Can you share what your plans are for?
Yes, I can, and thanks for the question. Did everybody hear that? It's about restaurants, and which you don't get a license to be a bar, you get a license to be a restaurant, by the way, in our state. But yes, there is that 11 o'clock last call that we have that's based on evidence. Also, what we did, and we'd like to remove that as quickly as we can, but all the evidence shows that that's a hot spot. Those are hot spots. Some maybe much more than others, but we want to remove those. Those are some of the last restrictions that we had. We did it a little differently from the way they did it in other states. You don't hear us here talking about essential businesses. Everybody's business is essential to them and their family. So, how do you decide whether on this side this one's okay and this one is not? So we didn't even go that way. It's been missed usually in the news reports. But what we did was we looked at those activities and enterprises, locations, circumstances where the virus would be most likely to spread. That is, where people are close up, face to face, touching each other or touching things. And then the next person touched the same thing. Like in retail places, you go to a shoe store, you might pick up 3 or 4 pairs of shoes, and the next person pick up the same ones, and you can transmit it on your hand. So we picked about 30 different types of activities, including barbershops, beauty salons, massage therapies, restaurants, concerts, and a lot of others. There were about 30. Alabama did it the same way we did, or close to it. Maybe one other state did. And what we said, we put limits on that. We put them waited as long as we could, but then it was wise to do it, so we did it. We tried to keep them on as short as we had to. And then we were one of the last states to have any sort of stay-at-home order, and ours was not a stay-at-home order. Ours was a home or work order, which meant go to work, go home, and any place is open in between that you need to do business with, or go to the park or whatever, go ahead and do that. So we used a lighter touch, a different, a more targeted approach. We thought at the time, we thought it was a better approach, and we are convinced now that it was a much better approach, because our economy did not close down. We are not ever going to close down. We slowed down, we didn't close down, and as a result, we're not suffering the consequences. As a result, we are doing much better than most other states in recuperating, and we haven't wasted any money. And one thing that we did when we got the 1.9 billion CARES Act at the beginning, it ended up being 900 and something million back into our unemployment trust fund, so that businesses would not have to pay more taxes to refill that unemployment fund. That was a wise thing to do. Our legislature is very cautious, very careful, very measured, and those were good steps that they took. But back to your question, I look forward to getting those few restrictions that we have left. I look forward to removing them as soon as possible. Let me say one other thing I mentioned. The hospitals were our focus at the beginning and were the prime movers in vaccinating people, because they had the people in places and refrigerators and all that to do it, and everybody knew where they were practiced at it. But now, and they were slow, some of them getting started, but we corrected that, and they are now, most of them are moving along very well, notably Prisma, which had their press conference today over there across the street. But now the focus has got to go on the pharmacies, and they're not moving fast enough. It's frustrating. They're just not moving fast enough. So we'll be encouraging them, finding out what sort of bottlenecks are all there, because they're all over the place. Pharmacies are everywhere. And as I say, not all, but about 600 have agreed to participate. And once we have the hospitals going, the pharmacies going, and then we get these mobile units going out, and we've already got some mass vaccine sites going on. When we get all that happening, and all these extra new doses start coming in, and they're not going to go down. We're at 139,000 doses a week now, coming in now, and that's only going to go up. It's not going to go down. Yes, sir.
Governor Andrew Siders, Aiken County, hope you're well. The overall effect of the pandemic on tourism, I'd like some answers on that as far as the tourism goes, and also the effect on the state budget.
Well, the state budget, because we were careful, we're not in a hole like some other places are. Last year, as you know, the legislature typically adjourns in June, and about March, they decided that the best thing to do would not be to pass a new budget, including the things that were in the last year's budget, and then seeing how much new money we had coming in from economic growth, and adding that new money expected into the budget that would start in June. They just continued, they call it a continuing resolution, said what we did last year, we're going to do this fiscal year. And that's where we are now. They have not passed. So we did not go in the hole as they did in some other states. The other states having to borrow billions of dollars because they didn't do that. They went ahead and spent what they thought was coming in. It didn't come in, and they were left in trouble. I think we were looking for, I can't remember the numbers exactly, but we were looking for, I think it was about, I'm scared to say, we got about half, a little more than half, maybe about 3/4 of what the new money that's expected to come in it looks like is coming in. So we'll be able, our budget will grow this fiscal year, but not as much as it would have, but it will in much better shape than the other states. Yes, ma'am.
I am asking a question on behalf of someone that's live on Facebook. Their name is Mary Gass. and they wanted to know if you're familiar with the Rotary Ready program that we've put forward to help with volunteers and the vaccination program.
No, I am not, but I'm glad to hear of it. Tell her to sign everybody up. See, that's something, to give you an example, up in Rock Hill, there's a hospital there, and they were looking for a big place to have a vaccine site, because you understand when people come in, you don't want them all waiting together because they might spread the virus, and after they get the shot, you don't want them all huddled up because they might, it's supposed to stay for 15 minutes like an allergy shot, like other vaccines. So they needed a big space. Well, Congressman Ralph Norman is a developer there, and among his properties was a building bigger than this room that we're in now. And he turned that over, talked to the mayor, Mayor Geddes in Rock Hill, and they had the hospital there, and they had volunteers all over the place. And it's a smoother operation as you'd ever see. And a lot of old people, there's a paradox in this whole thing, is that the older people are the ones most susceptible and need to get the vaccination, but the older people are the ones least knowledgeable about how to navigate the internet. So there's a disconnect there. And that's being handled by these hospitals and others by having people there who can make appointments on the spot, or you can call a number and show up, and they'll have a number of people, as they did in Rock Hill at this particular location, signing people up, helping them get the information into the VAMS recording, the federal online vaccination log, and then from then on it was just moving them right through the line. So there's plenty of room for volunteers. You had volunteers doing all kinds of things up there in this huge space, whether it's directing traffic in, helping the people that needed some help physically, working with them to get the information into the computer and everything else. It was wonderful. We need to do that everywhere. Listen, the government cannot do this or anything else by itself. We've got to have help, got to have information, got to have help.
Rock Hill, as you know, has been saving the world for a long time, and delighted to hear that. But since we were talking about money a moment ago, I'm curious, I know the federal government is bearing presumably the lion's share of the load on this thing, but do you have a feel at this point for how much it will cost the state to administer all this vaccine and so forth?
The answer, yes, a feel for it, don't have a number. I know there is a number, but most of this is paid for through the federal funding, which of course comes from you and everybody else in this room. But it's most of it is covered. All the National Guard, it was 75%, now 100% of their expenses are covered. The Emergency Management Division keeps a running tab. We're spending some state money on it, of course. The vast majority is coming from the federal government. But it's a lot. And in addition to that, you have all the unemployment insurance funds. You have the Small Business Administration. As you know, Danny Elsie is the head of Department of Employment and Workforce, and I think they have, through that organization, there's been, I'm going to guess about $7 billion that has come from the federal government into South Carolina. Maybe more than that, maybe closer to 8. It's a lot of money. Yes, ma'am.
So you alluded that a third of the healthcare workers and many of the folks in South Carolina did not want to have the vaccine. Is there any way that we can encourage the ones who are reluctant to have it so that we don't continue to get infected?
Well, I guess the way to encourage them is there have been many experts that said that the vaccine is safe. There's some who have doubts about that, who are concerned. You have a lot of young women or child age women who are concerned. It was about a third at the hospitals in the beginning, which surprised the hospital administrators. But I think that number has gone up. I think I mentioned a few weeks ago, is it 50%? It may be more than that by now. I don't know. And also, I forgot to say, we dropped the age. If you're in the hospital as an inpatient, and you're 65 or older, you're eligible for the shot if you want to take it. But there's some people that don't like to take shots. They prefer diet and exercise, and they just don't want to take shots, don't want to take medicine. You can't make anyone do it, but I believe that we will have plenty of vaccine for all those who want it, and I think that the supply will grow greatly in March. And that is why we have the National Guard and the Emergency Management Division integrated with DHEC and working with the other agencies as well as volunteer organizations to be sure that we get the vaccine out the way it needs to be. The rural areas are a challenge because a lot of times there's no place to really go to reach all the people. But we're working on that diligently. Yes, let's go to him.
Yes, sir, Governor. I wondered, the issue of pharmacies, you know, we can go to Publix now and get a flu shot, a pneumonia shot, shingles, whatever you need. Is the problem with getting it into pharmacies the federal red tape that comes along with it in this system that you alluded to, or is there something beyond that that's a problem getting it into pharmacies?
It's partly the federal government's slower introduction of the Moderna vaccination, the shots out into the public. That was about 4 weeks after the Pfizer vaccine was initially available in the hospitals, which was the main place that it went. That's part of it, but a lot of it is just folks are just not moving the ball. They're not. Maybe they don't have a sign up. Maybe they don't have enough hours. But some of them, I'm hoping they could be running out of vaccine. Our goal is everybody gets a shipment every week. At the end of that week, whenever that shipment, if it comes in on Tuesday, before the next Tuesday, that location ought to be empty. You don't need to spread it out. Because if you got enough to give 100 people a shot, Monday through Friday, they're going to give them all 100 on Monday if you can, because by Friday somebody might have caught the virus. So there are a lot of different reasons. Some involving personnel, some involving just not thinking it through. There's a little bit of imagination required in some of these things, but where there's a will, there's a way, and we need to do it. So we'll encourage, as I mentioned, about 600 pharmacies that have signed up and want to be eligible. That many are not doing it yet, but we're working on that as well.
Governor, we'll have the last question.
Last question right there.
Thank you, Governor. You said where there's a will, there's a way. I think many of us might like to hear more about how that could be applied in your capacity toward our school systems and the restarting. How can you encourage them? Do you have any power?
That power, I do have some. However, when the legislature passed the continuing resolution, they provided that money going to the schools, the public schools, would go through the Department of Education. And I do have some, of this office has some influence there, but we're not in charge of that. But the main way to get the schools, if you're speaking of the schools opening, is that your question? Is if you want them to open, you need to say so. And I'm repeating myself, I think, according to the recent studies, there is either no evidence of spread in the classrooms or virtually no evidence. And those are the facts so far. We did not know that at the beginning. I remember being concerned about what's going to happen when the schools open up. What are we going to do then? Well, it's turned out that this virus is for the older citizens. Those are the ones that are most likely to succumb and to pass away and to get very ill. It's not the young children. And those schools, all of the private schools in our state that have about 50,000 students, which is about the same all the branches of the University of South Carolina. That's that many students. They have all been open face-to-face 5 days the whole time. And they have not had any outbreaks or any problems to our knowledge. We've heard of none, and we've asked. Also, of the 79 school districts, I think it may be up in the 20s, maybe 21 or 22 that are open to 5-day face-to-face, and they've had no problems. I wish that all of these, I don't know who is the motivating of the decision makers. I presume it's the districts. They listen to a lot of people, but what they should do, and what we've encouraged them to do, is to talk to those school districts where they are going 5 to 5, 5 days a week face to face, and see what they're doing, and do the same thing or something like it. All the populations aren't the same, the temperatures aren't the same, the mountains are different from the coast. But there are a lot of similarities in this thing, and all the schools have all the personal protective equipment that they can ask for. We've made that available, and so we have stockpiles of those things, gloves, gowns, masks, all of those in the millions at the Emergency Management Division that can be shipped out right now, if anybody wants that. So that is the question of where there's a will, there's a way. We want the school districts to have the will to open up, because otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, the unintended consequences are going to be disastrous, and I don't know how we're going to fix it or how long it'll take. But the good news is, again, South Carolina is doing better than most of the other states. We've got good leadership. People ask, why do you have good leadership? And I say, because we got good people. We got good people in our state who are willing to serve, to help, to take the time to give an opinion, to give some advice, or to get involved. And so I thank you for the Rotary program. I didn't know about the volunteer program.
RotaryRhetoric.org.
Okay, thank you very much. Y'all, thank you, Peggy and I both thank you for the letters coming to us.
Thank you, Governor. It's always a pleasure to hear you chat, and welcome back to your own Rotary Club. We did have a record number of people online with Facebook, so that was obviously because of your attendance here today. We appreciate that, but I wanted you all to know that we did have numerous people also in attendance online. Governor, you're a member of Rotary, so I have two gifts for you today. One, a general thank you, Karen. Thank you very much. And since you're a member of Rotary, you also get one of our masks. It says People of Action, of course, but it is a Rotary mask since you're a Rotarian. And we certainly know that you are a person of action. We appreciate that. I did want you to know, based on that last question, President-elect Catherine has Molly Spearman coming in the lineup of speakers soon. Do we have her nailed down yet? I'm not sure we do.
22nd of February.
The 22nd of February, so 3 weeks.
After our break.
Yeah, right after we have a little break, we will have the Secretary of Education, the Superintendent of Education, Molly Spearman. So thank you. Also, Catherine, would you like to announce our speaker for next week?
Yes, we'll have Randolph Russell. He's an author. He'll give us all a quick test that we'll all fail, probably. So check up your civics knowledge, and but he'll be very entertaining. Just check the website and read about him a little bit. But he's the author of a book America in No Time.
So American civics lessons for next week. So we look forward to that. Okay, thank you all. We will end in song.